Hi guys, this is Hero, and today I'm going to be going over exaltation versus debilitation versus own sign versus opposite sign for all the planets. Okay, and mainly actually in general for the planets, and I might touch on a few details here and there. And I have the chart here for reference of all the planets where everyone gets exalted, debilitated, own sign, and opposite. Okay, now here's a very, very important thing to understand. Okay, first off is that you probably never had anybody emphasize the importance of opposite sign placement of a planet's own sign. Okay, I'll get into that in a little bit. But the first thing to understand is the difference between exaltation and own sign. Okay, so exaltation, whenever we just blindly go off of anybody's or any, reference online when it comes to astrological, placements, we think exaltation is the best, debilitation is the worst, and own sign is the, it's still pretty good, and opposite, most likely, we do not consider or care about at all. However, I would challenge that perception greatly. Own sign is what the planet really wants to do. Okay, that it's the plan it's really trying to fulfill. Okay, that's why wherever your sun is placed in your chart, whatever house Leo owns, it's going to give results of that placement of wherever Leo is. So, for example, if Sun's in the 11th house, and you have Leo in the 4th house, your sun is going to give results to the 4th house where Leo is. Okay, it literally owns this. This is the agenda that it wants to fulfill. Okay, now exaltation, really quickly, opposite is literally the opposite agenda of what that planet wants to fulfill. Okay, just keep that in mind. Exaltation is not necessarily what the planet wants to fulfill. Oh, and also when it comes to own sign, it prefers the planet's preferred, philosophy it wants to fulfill is the Mooltrikona, okay, which I placed first before the regular own sign. Okay, so you could say this is kind of like main agenda, and then this is kind of like side agenda. Okay, now exaltation, it's not necessarily what the planet wants to do, but it is the most direct, spiritually enlightening, energetic path that planet can take. Okay, all the signs are just representative of different energies, and so are all the planets in their own different ways. Okay, so exaltation, it's the most direct path that a planet can take. Debilitation is the most direct path a planet can take away from spirit, from it being in, from this energy individually isolating, being enlightened. Okay, however, debilitation energies, like I said, it's the most, the most direct path away from it growing the most spiritually. However, indirectly, because that planet is going so far away from its own spiritual mission, you can say indirectly, it's like, man, I really shouldn't be doing this. Let me stop doing this. Okay, I'll explain what I mean right now with a real life example. So the planets are just energies of us, right? Let's just say you are a modern day child. Okay, you're a child living in the modern day. An exaltation, for you would be being raised in a very religious household. Okay, this is going to be great. It's the most direct path supporting you for spiritual enlightenment. Okay, your parents might be religious. You might be going to temple or church or whatever very frequently. You're probably eating great foods in the house. You don't have too many bad influences. Okay, they're probably setting you up with really nice friends, like really, spiritually minded or religious minded friends. That's exalted. Okay, it's not necessarily what per se the average child would want, but it's going to be the best for the average child to grow spiritually. Okay, debilitation, you could say, is the opposite of that. Okay, so it's the most direct path away from spiritual enlightenment. So that's like being raised in a house where, like, the father's not there, or he's an alcoholic, or the mother is like missing for days at a time, or she's on drugs, something like that. Own sign, it's the preferred thing. Okay, so if you're a modern day child, most likely you would prefer just the regular happy house where you guys are going out to eat from time to time, going to social gatherings, going to activities, taking vacations, blah blah blah. Opposite, it's the opposite of own sign. So you can imagine, like, let's just say the most frustrating placement. Okay, parents are placing all kinds of expectations on you. Just overall very frustrating in the house, yelling, just a lot of pressure to do stuff. Maybe some financial situations where you have to chip in, stuff like this. Okay, a lot of talk, like energies you don't want to deal with. So I hope you get a better understanding of how it is for all these 4 different categories. Okay, exaltation, yeah, it's great, but it's not necessarily what a planet wants to do. Okay, debilitation, yeah, overall it's kind of bad, but it can indirectly lead you on a spiritual path. For example, that kid being raised in an alcoholic or drug infested household, after a while he could be like, man, this is an environment I really want to get away from, and this is something that I never want to consider in my life. Okay, that's why I'd almost say in the modern day society, debilitated energies can probably be even stronger than exaltation, because indirectly in the long term, after a while, you will actually truly learn more, because you would have realized what the complete opposite from the spiritual truth is, and you'll want to pursue nothing but the spiritual truth. Okay, especially if you have a planet debilitated and it's retrograde or it's stationary, this is going to be very, very powerful in the long run. Okay, now own sign, it's probably for the average material person what it's going to bring its planets the most happiness. Okay, because most people are not looking for what's going to make me the most spiritually enlightened. Okay, most people are looking for, well, how can I get what I want, and that energy is purely own sign. And same concept goes with opposite sign. Most people, the most frustrating placement is actually not going to be debilitated. It's probably going to be opposite sign. Okay, because this is literally the opposite of what the planet wants to do. Okay, at least this placement, over time you'll learn and stuff like that. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be super contrary to the agenda the planet is trying to fulfill. Okay, but the opposite sign it's literally the exact opposite here. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. For example, let's just take Venus, right? Venus, let's just say you're Libra ascendant. Venus gets exalted in Pisces. If you're Libra ascendant, Pisces is in your 6th house. Okay, now Venus gets debilitated in Virgo, which is the 6th sign. So Venus, it doesn't necessarily like Pisces. If you're a Libra ascendant, it's not the biggest fan of sitting in Pisces. Okay, it's forced to detach, which is what Pisces represents, in the 6th house, and it naturally doesn't like 6th house energies. Okay, so some planets appreciate its exaltation energies more than others, or should I word it a little bit better? Some planets enjoy being exalted a little bit more than others. Okay, same thing with debilitated. Some, not enjoy getting exalted or getting debilitated more than others. Okay, Venus, I'd say, is one of the planets relative to the other ones that are not the most fond of getting exalted. I'm not saying your Venus is automatically bad if it's in Pisces. In fact, it's still pretty good, but it's a little bit more challenging than, let's just say, Moon and Taurus. Okay, Moon and Taurus. Moon loves Taurus. Okay, this is like the best thing ever. Okay, if you're a Cancer ascendant and you have Moon in Taurus in the 11th house, this is like the best thing ever. Your mind is. The emotional satisfaction is through the roof. Okay, but I'll take one that's kind of in the middle. Let's just say Sun in Aries, exaltation. So why get the sun like Aries? Well, sun could represent the identity, and Aries could represent new changes. So the identity, it loves new changes, right? It loves new things, new experiences. Okay, it loves constant stimulation, you could say. But sun also doesn't like Aries for a reason, because it doesn't necessarily all the time enjoy getting out of its comfort zone. It likes staying in its comfort zone. So yeah, it's getting its new things, but it's also being forced to get out of its comfort zone. Okay, so this is something that exalted energies can bring. And in the long run, for this example, sun could, it gets used to and it accepts the fears related to getting out of its comfort zone. And at the same time, it starts to detach from all the, constant stimulation that occurs. After you experience one new thing from another, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm learning that I can still be happy regardless. My happiness is not going to depend on, constant changes for the ego, stuff like that. Maybe you guys get the picture of what I'm trying to say. One thing I also want to keep in mind is that some planets have opposite own signs, right? So for example, Mercury and Jupiter, okay? Jupiter owns Sagittarius and Pisces, Mercury owns Virgo and Gemini, and opposite of Mercury signs are Jupiter's, and opposite of Jupiter signs are Mercury's. But that same planet, like Jupiter, when it comes to exaltation and debilitation, it has opposite signs with Mars. Same thing with Mercury. It has opposite signs with Venus. Okay, but Venus has opposite signs with Mars, when it comes to own sign. Okay, I hope you guys see what I'm talking about here. What this represents is that, on more of a surface level, you could say, planets have, their agendas, you could say, complement and contrast each other more on a surface level if they have opposite own signs. Okay, but if they have opposite exaltation and debilitation signs, they have complementing and contrasting energies on more of a spiritual level. I'll give you an example with the Jupiter and Mercury. Jupiter represents the spiritual intelligence, and Mercury represents, your rational intelligence. So on the surface, they complement each other. Okay, the all planets and signs aspect seventh house from each other. Okay, so they influence each other, your spiritual intelligence and your rational intelligence, but they're also, like I said, opposite from each other. Okay, for example, I'll give you a real life example. Whenever I'm having a conversation with someone who's really smart, they have a lot of rational intelligence, but their spiritual awareness is not there. Whenever I'm trying to explain to them stuff about spirituality, it's not kicking in. Why? Because Mercury is literally the exact opposite of Jupiter. Okay, I'm trying to explain something. I'm trying to have them connect to their Jupiterian energies, but they're trying to process it from a Mercury standpoint, and it's not going to work out. They're both the same. They both represent intelligence, but they're both opposite from each other. Okay? That's why, by the way, if you're someone who recognizes the spiritual side of you but has trouble advancing the spiritual side of you, most likely it's because you're trying to interpret all the spiritual stuff from a Mercury standpoint rather than a Jupiterian standpoint. Okay? Just a side note, Jupiterian standpoint, you mainly have to just accept, and there's a certain sense of intuition that comes with it that can't be understood by Mercury that well, okay? But, so on the surface level, they both represent intelligence, but they're also both opposite. Now, on a spiritual level, Jupiter has that relationship with Mars, okay? Jupiter and Mars, they're both the only planets that own a fire and a water sign, okay? But Mars owns the 12th house from Jupiter, and Jupiter owns the 12th house from Mars. Okay, so they're both, like as far as what signs they own. So on a spiritual level, they both own water and fire signs. They both have that, that spiritual, that intuitive nature to both of them. Okay, most people don't think of Mars like that because they don't understand the whole picture. But that's that. But however, they're obviously opposites from each other. Okay, there's a reason why Mars is a malefic and Jupiter is, going to be a benefic. Well, Jupiter is a benefic. I didn't mean to say coined in that tone. But so for example, Jupiter, you know, at a spiritual level, yeah, they both represent intuition, but they both have to be conducted in a very different ways. Okay, Mars is very aggressive. Okay, it can't go into Cancer. Okay, it has to be tamed in Capricorn. Jupiter, it's not good to you. It's okay to put it in Cancer because it has such benefic energies. You want to use that, expand that energy to kind of help others however you can. Okay, not try to tame it per se, and have it possibly manipulate it into some kind of materialistic outcome. Okay, so I hope you guys kind of got the point of what I was trying to describe there. I would challenge you guys to utilize that same relationship with all the other planets. Okay, because almost every planet has a sign, opposite from it in the own and opposite, but it has that same relationship with a different planet as far as exaltation and debilitation. And once you understand how they all kind of, relate to each other, I think you're really gonna get a better understanding of not only all the planets' energies, but also the signs' energies. Okay, but remember, a lot of people they just coin exaltation as great blindly. Okay, like I said, it's great if you're spiritually minded. Okay, even debilitated can be great spiritually minded if you really have that certain mindset to you. But for the average person, most likely they're going to be quote unquote happier when it comes to own sign. Okay, same thing with opposite sign. If you're a very materialistically minded person, your opposite can actually be a lot more devastating than your can be. Okay, I'm not saying it will be. Can be a lot more devastating than your debilitated energies. Just stuff to look out for. Okay, and I think I covered mostly everything. Just one last thing. Rahu and Ketu, some of the classics say, and I also believe that Rahu and Ketu do not own or get exalted or debilitated in any sign particularly. Okay, I know there's a lot of new, theories on which signs in they own and they get exalted or debilitated in. I, however, don't believe in any of that. Okay, I think that they are just two unique energies in themselves. They don't own anything. They don't get exalted or debilitated in anything. They just behave a little bit differently in certain signs that, people can have their own opinions on, how they behave from whatever perspective that they're looking at it from. Okay. So I covered that, covered own sign, covered the relationships on exaltation and debilitation versus own and opposite, as well as planets sometimes having opposite relations, exaltation relations with a different planet, but when it comes to own sign, having opposite relations with another planet, like how I described Jupiter versus Mercury and Jupiter versus Mars. You can almost identify a relationship like that with almost any planet here. Okay, except actually for Sun. Sun it has opposite relations with Saturn and exaltation and debilitation, and as far as own sign. Okay, that's why Sun hates Saturn so much. Okay, they just really do not get along. And one thing I just really wanted to notice quickly is that Mercury is obviously the only planet that gets exalted in its own sign. Okay, it represents a rational intelligence. I guess you can kind of say, it's actually good I brought up that example. Mercury, it's not able to understand so much the deeper spiritual depths of things. Okay, so it kind of knows what it wants, quote unquote. So it just ends up getting exalted in its own sign. Okay, this is the highest spiritually that it can go. Okay, so which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just is what it is. Okay, yeah, there's just no level past Mercury. Okay, it's kind of like how Sun and Moon, they don't necessarily own two signs; they just own one. Okay, which is fine. Same with Mercury; it owns two, but it just happens to get exalted in one of the signs it owns. Okay, which is great because it's gonna behave great in Virgo. Okay, this is exactly what Mercury wants, and it's gonna, if you're able to channel those, Virgo energies. Not only is that what Mercury wants, but that's also it's going to be spiritually best for the planet. Okay, so hopefully at a gist, this all made sense. If you have any questions or comments, as usual, let me know. And like I said, hopefully you guys just got the gist of these two versus these two and started becoming aware of the importance of opposite signs. Okay, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you.